Welcome to SLAM Technologies. This is Dr. IT here today, and today we have one of our own, Janice. I'm going to start an interview process with her, and so Janice, welcome to SLAM Technologies.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yes, I have seen your application and your resume, and I believe going through, you seem fit for this position. And so before I conduct my interview, let me tell you a little bit of myself. I am the operations director for the SLAM Security Operations Center. I manage the people that are over here. I help them to analyze their logs and writing SOPs and doing their investigations. And I make a final determinations based on what they are doing in terms of performing analysis. And even sometimes if they have to block a certain URLs and IP address, I have to make the final decisions of that. And, so pretty much that is what we do here at SLAM. We have our SIM, we have our Security Operations Center. We are about 10. Very good team, that we have here. And we also support both on cloud and on-site, on-prem systems. We have MSSP that we send some of the logs to them. And so that is what we do here. And our shift is Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day. It's morning shift that is available. Would you have any problem doing that?
No.
Excellent. Now, to progress with this interview, I want you to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell me how your qualification fits with this position that you applied.
Okay, to start with, my name is Janice Oswe-Friye, a cybersecurity analyst who has extensive knowledge in cybersecurity policies and procedures. My main specialty is with security operations, investigating in real-time incidents. I do malware analysis, incident response and handling, creating and reviewing SOPs, vulnerability management using Tenable, Nessus, and Qualys. I also do endpoint security management. The tools that I've used before is CrowdStrike, Endgame, and the Symantec. Investigating into phishing of emails, and if there are any IOCs, I do a custom block into them, block the senders and the URLs as well. I have extensive knowledge in the cyber kill change, the TTPs and the MITRE attack framework, monitoring of the IPS system. The one that I've used is the Firepower, and then creating alerts and reports using Splunk. And then recently I did an integration of all the InfoSec app tools to Okta SSO. So basically, these are some of the things that I've been doing over the years. Yeah.
Excellent, Janice. We appreciate that. And mentioning, you spoke about the cyber kill chain. Can you give me the process that you take in doing a cyber kill chain?
Yeah, so with the cyber kill change, it kind of explains the tactics, the procedures that the attacker uses in kind of, how do we call it, attacking a company or an organization. So before that, what they have to do, so we have series of procedures and steps that they use to attack a company. So the first one is they do reconnaissance. So with the reconnaissance, they try to gather information about the target. Let me put it that way. They gather information about the target being they gather information about the senior management. They gather information about the port, the ports, open ports. Like they do a vulnerability scan. That is what we call the footprinting, the reconnaissance. That they gather as much as information that they want before they tag. They sometimes even go to the extent of going to your social media handles just to gather information from that. So that is the first step that they do. After that, they create what we call the weaponization. And then with the weaponization, they create a payload to just exploit the vulnerability on your system. After they create the weaponization, they deliver that weaponization onto your, how do you call it, on your network. And after that, they exploit it. How do they exploit your network? What they do is they kind of find vulnerabilities on your network, and then they use so many avenues like the social engineering, just to like the phishing of emails, just to get the individual click on the link, and then they can find open ports, if you've not patched your system. They use all these things to exploit your how do we call your system, so that they can get into it. After they've been able to exploit your network, they create what we call the command and control system. So where with that, they've been able to come onto your network. So they kind of exfiltrate data from your network to the command and control center. So these are the procedures that the attackers go through and then get onto your system. Yeah.
That is excellent. You know, it looks like you have an extensive knowledge of the cyber culture, and you know, it is one of the key areas that, as you have expressed, the attackers use to penetrate through your systems, and in that capacity, they are on your network. Now, how do you investigate a ransomware?
Yeah, so with the ransomware system, what you have to do is, a ransomware is like the attacker trying to encrypt your data and then demanding a ransom from the organization. So with the ransomware, every organization, you have to prepare for it, because they will encrypt your data and then you have to pay the ransom, and then companies, we are not willing to pay that ransom. So we have to follow the incident procedure system. So we have about 6 steps that you have to take to prepare for a ransomware, or to like, how do I put it, to remediate a system that have been attacked by a ransomware. So the first thing that you have to do is the preparation state. So how do you prepare? You have to get all the security controls that will help you protect all your network. And then you have to train your staff as well. You have to train your staff very well. All these are the preparation stage. You train your staff on how they have to prepare themselves. If they see a ransomware, they'll be able to know this is a ransomware. Like an example of the preparation is you doing the tabletop exercise with your staff, so that in case of ransomware, they will know where to go. In my previous company, for instance, we had, we were in the cloud, that was in the AWS. So we had an account where we can go in, so that in case of a ransomware, what we have to do, if we have to disconnect a server, we have, how do we call it, an account that we use to disconnect a server. So the management team will help you prepare for all these things. So in case of ransomware, everybody knows what he or she is doing. So after the preparation stage, you, the SOC analyst, you have to be able to identify and detect that this is a ransomware. And how do you detect that this is a ransomware? Like, for instance, when you see your maybe, how do we call, all your files has been encrypted, you cannot open any SharePoint file, it tells you that your maybe your system has been attacked by a ransomware. So you being able to identify that this is a ransomware and detect that this is a ransomware. Another one too is for you to review your logs. So after the identification and the detection stage, what you have to do is you have to contain the ransomware. So how do we contain it? You have to kind of, after reviewing the logs, you have to kind of, maybe if you have to take away, maybe if you have to contain, if for instance, if it's only one system that have been kind of compromised, you have to kind of contain that particular system so that it doesn't spread to other parts of the, how do we call it, on the system. If it's a network, maybe the malware has spread so that the network has to be disconnected, you have to also disconnect it. So there are so many ways of containing the ransomware. You have to contain it. After that, what you have to do is you have to eradicate it. How do you eradicate it? You have to run the system with antivirus. If it's a machine or series of machines that have been affected, run them with antivirus, clean it up before you put it back on the network. And after the eradication, what are the lessons learned? Maybe, for instance, after that, you have to do the recovery. After the eradication, you have to do the recovery. The recovery is as part of the preparation stage. Every organization has to do the backup. So the recovery with the backup, you have to, after eradication, you have to recover from your backups. So you recover from your backups and restore the data. And after that, what are the lessons learned? So the lesson learned is that maybe how do we call it? A user clicked on a phishing link or downloaded an attachment that brought about that ransomware. There has to be intensive training or security awareness on phishing. So these are all the procedures that you have to go into, place for a ransomware attack to be remediated. Yeah. Doc, you are muted.
Very wonderful. I'm going to ask you some few questions, and then if you you don't know the answer, just say skip. If you know the answer, just let's continue. All right. So what's the difference between symmetric and asymmetric?
I think one of them used.
You don't laugh at the interview like this, okay?
No, okay. I don't. That one, I think one of them use public and private and key for encryption and decryption, and the other one, I am just confused about that. And the other one uses only one key for both of them. Yeah.
Okay. So now let's talk a little bit about the EDRs. You said you've used EDR according to your resume. And how do you use EDR to perform investigation?
Yeah, so currently in the cybersecurity
First of all, what is EDR?
So it's an endpoint protection tool. So we use the EDRs to protect our various endpoints, like the servers and the various workstations. So in case of a malware, the EDR tool is there to protect us from these malicious malwares. Yeah, so that's what the EDR tool, we use it for. And so I've used a couple of them in my previous experience. I feel what we call the CrowdStrike. We have another one we call the end game, and then the semantic endpoint. I've used that before. So now with the help of machine learning and artificial intelligence, these tools have been integrated with what we call the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So it makes analysis very easy and makes detection very easy. For instance, a tool like CrowdStrike, if it detects any malicious activities on, an endpoint, it's sometimes because of the artificial intelligence and machine learning, it automatically terminates before it causes any harm. Yeah. And then with my previous job, I was managing the CrowdStrike. So I was helping out with the prevention policies, the sensor policies, and the detecting policies. So all these policies have been set up in such a way that it detects current or threats and malwares in the system. And some of them with CrowdStrike, for instance, they have the shadow something policies that helps to detect zero-day ransomware attacks. Yeah.
And so do you know how to create a dashboard in your SIM?
Yeah, I know how to create a dashboard, but even though I've done Splunk 1, 2, and 3, I know how to create, but I've not done before. So in my previous job, what I did was creating alerts and reports. Yeah.
Okay. So give me one of the alerts you created that I believe is good.
Yeah, so with my previous job, I was assigned a project to create an alert whereby the how do we call it, the firepower logs are not logging into the Splunk, which is the same tool. So I was able to create that particular index and then feed it in. So what you have to do is you create the alert and then you create the query for it to fit in that if the firepower are not logging into Splunk, it should create an alert for you. So you create the index and then you create maybe the number of minutes that it has to take for Splunk to alert you that, hey, the firepower logs, which is the IPS system, is not logs are not reporting into the Splunk. So you create the number of minutes and then the alerting system, how do you want it to alert you? Maybe you have a SOC inbox, you want it to generate the alert in the SOC inbox, it will generate you. So anytime it triggers, it creates an alert for you in the SOC inbox and then you investigate into it. So if you investigate and it's not a false positive, it's indeed, it's not reporting logs, you have to reach out to the appropriate team for them to fix that, yeah.
Nice. So talking about, this, that brings me to the IOCs. Do you know anything about the IOCs?
Yeah, so the IOCs are the artifacts that are on your network. Like we have the malicious IPs, URLs, the hashes, they are all artifacts or they are all IOCs on your networks, yeah.
So what is an IOC?
That is what I've explained in general. A malicious URL.
What does the abbreviation stand for?
Oh, incident of compromise. Yeah,
indicators of compromise. Okay. Now I see that you have a backup interview with you. Adra, what is TTP? Janice, give me.
Yeah, so with the TTP, it talks about.
Hey, she's not.
So with the TTP, it talks about the tactics, the techniques, and the procedures that the attackers use to attack an organization. Yeah.
Perfect. And that is wonderful. So let's move into some of the analysis. It seems you have very good in-depth knowledge of your analysis. I want to take you into phishing and how do you investigate a phishing and then also a bulk phishing alert when it comes to the network.
Yeah, so with the phishing of emails, so how do we even get the phish? So the phish, I hope, how do we even get the phish? So we have in our Outlook.
Okay.
In our Outlook, in our Outlook, we have a tool that is integrated in our Outlook, which is called the Cofense. And then anytime a user feels that this is an email is kind of malicious, he reports it through the Cofense icon on the Outlook. And then we, the SOC, we get the alert, and then it's there that we start our investigation. So what we have to do is that after you get the alert, the SOC analyst, you have to be very cautious. You don't click on the URL or any other thing. So the first thing you can do is you can save that particular email. We have open source tools that you can run the email in. Like we have a tool called Any App Run. You can run, it's used for malware analysis. So you can throw it in there and see whether it's kind of malicious or not. If you don't have that, you can copy the URL and throw it in the URL scan or virus total, and then see whether it's kind of malicious or not. Secondly, you can also analyze the headers in MX Toolbox. That is an open source intelligence tool as well. You can analyze the headers, check the SPF, you can check the DKIM, and then you can check the DMAC as well. And then look at the IP, where the IP is coming from, is it malicious or not? So after all these things, you find out that maybe it was spoof, it's malicious, and then maybe the user click on the link. What you have to do is that you have to find out the number of users. For all you know, it was sent out to so many users, but one user click on it. So you have to review your logs in Splunk. and then see how many users click on the link. And after that, the first thing you have to do is that you have to block the sender. In my case, I've used the proof point, so you can block the sender in proof point, and then you can block the URL in what we call the proof point tab. We have a tool for a proof point. We call it the proof point tab. It's URL defense and attachment defense. So you can block the URL them. And then after that, you come to the users, maybe their accounts have been compromised. So if they are blocked, what you have to do is you have to do the search and purge, and then retrieve all these or quarantine all these emails or get all these emails from the users email. So Proofpoint has done so wonderfully well that they have this tool called the Proofpoint trap. So the Proofpoint trap, after they find out that, hey, a malicious email has been delivered to a user, the Proofpoint trap has the ability to do that purge and said that previously we were doing it manually, and then take away all the, how do we call, all the malicious email from the user's account, and then quarantines all those ones. After that, what you have to do is, in my case, if it was a link that the user clicked on, what you have to do is how to reset the user's password. And then we have this Active Directory. We, the SOC analyst, we have the capability to reset the user's password, or you can allow the users to reset their password. If it was a downloaded attachment, we have the semantic endpoint. You can host into the computers, the user's, how do we call it, machine, and then run the user's machine with antivirus. And then if there was any malware on that particular machines, all the antivirus will clear all of them up. So these are basically how you have to investigate into phishing of emails. And after that, you block all the IPs, you block all the URLs and the senders as well. Yeah.
Okay, that is wonderful. So talking about the phishing, and you spoke about blocking and the URLs. And what about if the phishing is malicious?
Yeah, if it's kind of malicious, is you have to block, like I said, you have to block the URLs. And then what you can, like I said, you can do your analysis.
What do you do with the user system?
The user system, as in,
let's say if I click the link and the system, my system become infected, what do you do from here?
Yeah, so if like I said, if it's become infected, what you have to do is, like semantic endpoint, for instance, I can post into your computer, either with CrowdStrike too, you can do it. With CrowdStrike, you can contain that particular host, run it with antivirus before you put it back on the network. With Symantec, you can also host into the computer and run it with antivirus straight away. Yeah.
That is wonderful. That is called quarantine, right?
Yeah,
so you put into the quarantine network, and then once you scan it, you bring it back again.
Back onto the network.
And that is wonderful. Very impressive, knowledge on the system. So let's talk about, the purging. You talk about phishing and using the proof point to purge. And so how do you purge?
Yeah, so with the purging, like I said, the purging is kind of you taking out all the delivered emails from the user, so that the users do not maybe click on the link or get infected with anyone. So like I said, now the Proofpoint has this tool called the Proofpoint trap. Immediately it finds out that some malicious, how do we call it, emails have been delivered, it automatically quarantines all these emails and take it out from the user's email. But initially we were doing it manually, and then you have to kind of do the purge and search manually on that Proofpoint, and then take it out from the user's emails. Yeah. And
that is to say, if only we know the signature, then Proofpoint can identify and purge it.
Yeah.
But what about if it's a 0 day? We haven't seen that, URL before, but it has some malicious infection, and Proofpoint doesn't think it was malicious. What do you think we should do?
Yeah, so like you said, with that one, you have to do a manual quarantine, manual purge. Like you have to do a manual one and then block it. Yeah.
That is good. So, you know, because of time, let's move forward and just talk about, you know, your malware analysis side. When you started introducing yourself, one of the things on your resume said you're a very good malware analytical person. Can you tell me, you know, one of the names of the malware that you've come across and how you investigated it?
So the one that I have in mind, we have so many malwares, trust me. So the one that I have in mind is the Trojan emotet. Yeah, so for instance, when you get like the Trojan emotet malware on your network, and then for instance, excuse me, and for instance, it gets onto your, now we have good tools like CrowdStrike can terminate it for you, right? But if it's still currently running, what you have to do is that we have basically two types of analyzing malware. We have other ones, but the most ones that we use is either the static one or the dynamic one. So with the static one, you can, if the hash is kind of, it's not executable. So what you have to do is that you can put the file on various, it doesn't change its behavior. Let me put it that way. The static one, that particular hash or malware doesn't change its behavior. So you can run those malwares in open tools like the virus total, and then if it's malicious, it can tell you this one is malicious. And then what you have to do, if you are using a tool like CrowdStrike, you can do a custom IOC block, add that particular malicious file onto your blacklist, and then anytime CrowdStrike sees that malware, it will automatically block it. Secondly, what you have to do is that with the dynamic one, it changes its behavior. So what you have to do is that, like I stated earlier, we have a tool called the any app run, or we have the sandbox, or if you have a VM where you throw that particular malware in, and then what you have to study the behavior of the malware, because with dynamic, it changes its behavior. So what is that malware trying to do on your environment? Is it trying to exfiltrate data on your network? Is it trying to change some windows or key registries on your network? So you have to study the behavior of malware. Is it trying to create some command and control data and sending some sensitive data outside your network? So that is what you have to do, study the attributes of that particular malware. And then after you see what it's trying to do, you kind of block it. You do a custom block on your network by blocking all the IOCs associated with that malware on your firewall, on your proxy, and then on your endpoint management too as well. Yeah.
So very good. Now you mentioned that with the malware changing its behavior, what is the name that we call the malwares that change their behavior?
That's the dynamic malware analysis.
Dynamic, but what is normally the name we call it? Don't worry. It's called polymorphic malware.
Polymorphic, yeah, right.
Now let's go into blocking. You kept mentioning blocking. How do you block a URL or IP address?
So with the URL and the IPs, now you can block it on your firewall. And then now with the firewall and the IDS system, like Firepower, for instance, and then Palo Alto, like they have the IPS and the firewall in one console. So the Firepower is doing the work of the firewall and then the IPS as well. And then Palo Alto, they have the same kind of console as well. So now it's kind of two in one thing. So in my company, what we were doing is now, initially when we were used to have the firewall only, we were sending it the IOCs to the network team for them to block it. Now with the SOC team, we have the chance to block that on our, how do we call it, on our network. So you go into the Firepower and then you do a custom block and then block the all the IOCs on your network. If you are using the endpoint protection tool like the CrowdStrike, and then it has to do with the file and the IPs too, you can also block it over there. And then if you are using Blue Coat servers, you have to block it on the Blue Coat servers as well. Yeah.
Wonderful. So how do you update yourself with this current, things going on in the market today? How do you get the most update?
Yeah, so I always read Hacker News, and then with the CISA, they also release 0-day vulnerabilities. So and any cyber news that comes over, so I upgrade myself with those news as well. Yeah.
So my final question is, what is SCP and which port number does it use?
And port 25.
Again?
Port 20, is it the simple mail?
SCP.
Say that again.
SCP. Secure Copy Protocol.
Secure Copy, SCP.
Yes.
Now one skip, please.
Okay, what about the SSH?
SSH uses port 22.
22, and that is the same port as the SCP.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's the same port as SCP. And you've done well. And, I think that's all I have for today. Do you have any other questions for me?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Please go ahead.
So I read through the job responsibilities and the roles. So what are some of the challenges that you guys face with your team? Yeah, the SOC team, what are some of the challenges that you guys face? Yeah.
So with the influx of the technology, you mentioned a lot about AIs, and then we have a lot of VRs, which is the virtual realities systems moving around. So we're getting a lot of data that the SIM is, incapable of handling them. And so we need more people who can bring their expertise in lowering down the noise that we are getting in our system. And so it's one of the reasons why we put this application out there. And I definitely will consider you to be one of them as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And my last question is, who is an ideal SOC analyst that you want to hire?
So the ideal SOC analyst is a person who's capable of connecting mind to mind and heart to heart with me. And I see that you tend to be one of them. You answered my question straight to the point, and you were able to define the malwares, defining the phishing. And so these are my ideal candidates, and a person who have the knowledge and the capability of doing the work. And that is my ideal candidate. And I found you to be one of them too.
All right, thank you very much.
So I definitely will just offer you the position. And so we will get back to you very soon.
And then
question for me.
All right, thank you.
Now, if you are hired, how much compensation are you looking for?
Okay, the pay range, the salary range, I'm looking between 150K to 200K.
Okay, that is not a problem. I believe, we can do something about this. So I will get back to you on that.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to end this interview here, and then we can talk.
Okay.